Hello everybody and welcome back. Today we're talking about the last video of the methods used to establish authoritarian states, ideology. Now, just as a final refresher, methods is an action committed either by a person or persons as a way to accomplish a goal. Ideology is a system of ideas and ideals, especially ones which form the basis of economic, political theory, and policy. So for Mao, we're talking about how his stems off multiple left-wing philosophies versus Hitler, which was stemming off of multiple right-wing philosophies. Now, what is it? Well, the only example we're going to talk about today is Maoism, and how Maoism stems from, as you can see in this propaganda photo, from multiple people. And it's really easy to remember. It's named after him, plain and simple. Let's get into this. So, what is Maoism? Well, as we talked about in our communism lecture, every leader has their own spin. Every leader has their own philosophical approach to communism. And that's exactly what Maoism is. Maoism is a blend of Marxism and Leninism, right? So we have, in this photo here, we have Mao, Stalin, Lenin, Friedrich Engels, and Karl Marx. So what Mao is creating is essentially, he's combining right here communism with Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels with Leninism, his version, which we call Leninism or a form of socialism, and skipping over Stalin and going right to his own, right? So he takes from these three and makes his own from there. Now, his version is that he's looking around and he's witnessing that in order for China to go through the stages of communism to advance, they need to industrialize. So Mao says it is impossible for China to be communist today. Today it's not possible. Because today it's the peasants versus the workers and the bosses. It isn't the workers versus the bosses, but there's a lower class from there. And so he would argue that because of how underdeveloped China was, how far behind China was in the Industrial Revolution and other creations, as we know where communism was written, that it needed to go and advance the society first, then it can achieve its attempt at Marxism and then communism, and then from there, the ultimate goal of pure communism. So for Mao, there needed to be a consistent, constant growth in the country. This growth being the advancement of society. So Mao argues that China, in order to truly achieve communism, in order to achieve what he wants, China needs to go through a state of constant revolutions. That in order for things to ever get done, the peasants need to rise up against the workers, who then rise up against the bosses. And then once the peasants become the workers, and the workers become the bosses, and the bosses kind of get taken down a bit, it's time for those peasants and those workers to rise up against the bosses, and then from there, move up to a higher state. And then once there, do it again as well. That China needs to fully westernize, needs to fully industrialize and become a quote-unquote modern society to then make that final push of overthrowing capitalism into communism. And Mao believes through this constant revolution, through this push of the peasants being seen as the highest class, there needs to be this understanding that only once that China gets to this point are they truly ready. And this argument of how the peasants are constantly moving up in society is a huge talking point, and also is what separates Mao from the 28 Bolsheviks. Because the 28 Bolsheviks want to follow Stalin and Stalinism. But Mao is saying, no, we need a Chinese communist style. We cannot use the West's because we are not the West. And in some cases, as we see later on, when Mao finally gets full power in 1943, Mao is saying, not only do we have to have our own version of communism, and that's because China is better than the rest of the world. Chinese communism is better than Stalin, is better than every other communist ideology beforehand. Yeah, we're taking our idea based off of Marx, but Marx got it not fully correct. China is going to be, and China is, the leader of the Communist Party. And so, as Mao gets more and more power, Maoism starts reflecting not only peasant constant revolution, but also pro-advanced Chinese nationalism. That China is above all, and that no one can ever stand up to it. And that is going to be a huge issue once the Chinese Civil War is over. Once Mao gains full control of his country, his ideology is going to really shift everything as to how he wants to approach society. And his ideology is very different from what we've seen thus far on how he wants to conduct himself and how he wants to conduct China. And the final note to say on Maoism is this philosophy, the underlying points of that is the only way to have a constant revolution, the only way to advance China, the only way to make sure China is the most advanced and superior country was through violence. So not only is Mao preaching all of these things, but he is also saying that at the end of the day, the way we are going to achieve these things is through unity and violence. And we notice starkly that this philosophy is present with the Futan incident, the rectification of conduct, the peasant policy, the Long March. Everything he does is for the peasants, even if that means killing the peasants to help the peasants. Right? Maoism is focused in that stratosphere, that thinking.